let's get started. May I welcome moderator Melody Yan, PANONY&PAnews project lead, Yan Xu, co-founder and executive chairman, Animoca brand's founder and CEO, Shen Luthra, founder, KazaNFT.com, Alvin Wang Graylin, Global VP of Cooperation Development HTC, Livia Wang, HashKey Group COO, and Gavin, doctor from Tsinghua University, to come onto the stage and share their insight with all of you. Welcome, and please, if you leave the stage with you all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's panel, The Super Narrative Enabled by the Comprehensive Integration of AI and Web3. So imagine a world where the potential of AI converges with the decentralized promises of Web3. AI and Web3 are no longer just words, but actions. I use it every day. And that's the world that we are stepping into, and that's the essence of the discussion today. So I am Melody, the project lead at PANONY&PAnews. We are a leading media and blockchain consulting company since 2018. So before we jump into today's discussions, I'd like to hear a brief introduction from our panelists today. Would you like to kickstart yet?
Sure, my name is Yat. I'm chairman and co-founder of a company called Animoca Brands. We're actually headquartered in Hong Kong. We're a Web3, operating and investing company. We have over 450 investments in the space since about 4 or 5 years ago. We're the earliest investors in companies like OpenSea, Dapper Labs, Wax, Decentraland, helped kickstart the sandbox, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alvin Graylin. I'm with HTC, and I've been studying the AI and XR/VR field for about 30 years. I actually researched it back at MIT and University of Washington, and have been working in this field since. I founded 4 different companies in the AI and internet and mobile internet space, and really look forward to this next conversation here.
Hey guys, I'm Evan Luthra. I'm an angel investor and serial entrepreneur. Bought my first Bitcoin in 2014. Ever since then, been very bullish on the space. As angel investing, over 500 different companies across the space. Add value to the community. I have 2 million followers across different social media networks and write for all the top tier media and try to push the movement forward every day I can.
大家好，我是 Livio， 来自于 HashKey。
I'm Livio. I'm from HTC Group, HashKey Group. Maybe you don't know our company. We are in Hong Kong, and we are one of the few, actually 2 licensed company. And in Asia, we also have the HashKey Capital investment. We have a series of business in Asia.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Gary. We do research on the infrastructure of blockchain. We also help a lot of global Web3 projects and provide them with the technical support.
First questions you apply to everybody here is how do AI and Web3 as a separate technological revolutions for productivity and production relationship, how they interact, influence one another? Yeah, do you
Sure, I'll start. So, we think that AI and Web3 are very much intertwined. There's probably many use cases, but I'll really highlight sort of 2 or 3 main ones that we're really excited about. So the first one is around digital provenance, right? In an age where, with generative AI, AI can produce anything really. It's no longer about sort of the skill in terms of, maybe the way that it looks like, but rather the authenticity of who it's from, right? So when we think about things like NFTs, whether it's a Bored Ape, for instance, that we see over there, or whether it's a Picasso, for instance, something physical, what makes it valuable isn't the sort of skill of its production. What makes it valuable is its authenticity, its original, its story, the elements around that. And that becomes much more important when basically an AI can generate, all sorts of images. So it doesn't matter what's produced, it matters who's behind it, what's the story behind the authenticity. And also, as AI keeps generating more assets, they actually are drawing value from other creators. And again, on-chain is actually a very good mechanism to create sort of a way in which you can have a signature based on the actual creative work. and is also the best mechanism in which value can be shared, meaning it's entirely possible that a piece of art could be created by 1 million people's work. And if it happens to sell, then 1 million people can get a share of that because the AI knows where that happens. This is something you can only do on blockchain. But the one thing that we really like is, we're in Web3 gaming, and we invest a lot in that area. And the biggest AI agent that most consumers work with in the world today are actually NPCs, non-player characters in games. So if you don't play games, it's the thing that all our children or maybe gamers interact with about quests and missions, right? We all interact with them. But the AI is dumb. But with large language models, you can actually now create very smart AIs around them. They're the ones who are going to be transacting basically with all the billions of users out there. They're also going to be autonomous, meaning that they're not going to necessarily exist in just one game. So you can imagine that these AI agents, these NPC agents, are actually going to be traveling to different games and different environments because of the interoperability framework in blockchain. They're also going to transact with you and others. And what are they going to transact with? They're going to transact with in crypto. They're going to transact in digital assets. They're not going to do KYC. They're not going to have bank accounts because they're AI. And so as a result of that, we think that that's going to fuel sort of essentially digital asset sort of, not just trading, but volume interactions and transactions in a really big way. And so I would say these are two trends we're particularly excited about in the intersection of AI and Web3.
Thank you.
So maybe before answering, I probably maybe want to have a common definition of both AI and Web3, because I think AI is a little bit clearer because it's there's a lot less confusion. But even within AI, there's kind of traditional AI, and then there's the AIGC, and then there's large language models. A lot of people conflate all of those three into the same thing, but they're actually not, right? So traditional kind of good old-fashioned AI has been around for about 60 years and have been used throughout a lot of our lives. We just don't necessarily notice it. But the last couple years, AIGC and large language models have really helped to bring AI into the public sphere because it's a lot more accessible. Now, going to Web3, I think that there's also a lot of confusion there because there's some people say Web3, some people say Web 3.0, some people say Metaverse, and they also think that those three are the same thing. So let me just give you a very simple definition of each so that we at least have a common language. So to me, Web3 is really more about using blockchain and more for transactional purposes, and whereas Web 3.0 is really more about a decentralized internet, and Metaverse is really about a 3D internet. So when we kind of clarify what we mean by these things, it'll create a lot less confusion. So to your question about how AI is being applied to Web3, I think it actually, depending on which version of those Web3, it's going to be applied differently. But definitely for what I'm more focused on, which is the 3D internet, which is Metaverse, AI is in every aspect of it because it's part of the sensing activities that we use for our interface, for hand tracking, full body tracking, scanning of environments, AI character creation. All of that requires AI. Right? Now, for the decentralized side, I think there's going to be use of it for a lot of the back-end systems, for managing the DAOs, for ensuring security, for having the virtual worlds that some of these are going to be part of. And then on the transactional side, essentially a lot of the NFTs are being created by AI to generate the content. So it's dependent. There's a lot more details, but depending on which aspect of Web3, it is being applied in different ways. So sorry to maybe I confused it more by going into too much detail.
No, that's a good explanation for sure. For me, I mean, blockchain and Web3 is about giving power back to the communities, to decentralize access and governance, and give that control back to the people. And most of that happens through different smart contracts. But smart contracts also need data to be fed to them. And I think that's where AI can come in, that can automate that data that is being fed to the smart contracts. So we remove even more of human need for this. And we remove trust from humans and place complete trust in code, which is a lot less corruptible and a lot more transparent. I think that's the most beautiful implication of AI and Web3 coming together. and giving power back to the community and back to the masses. And then there's various different ways we will see AI coming in. Web3 is about ownership of content, or Web2 was creation of content, and Web3 was consumption of content. Web3 is about ownership of content. Now with AI, the level and the speed at which this content is going to be created is going to go exponentially faster. Like there's going to be way more content being created already. We're seeing books and ebooks being written by ChatGPT that are already breaking all-time bestseller lists. And I think that's where AI will come in. And now this Web3 will allow this content that's created by AI to be owned by the people. And I think that's also a very, very good intersection between AI and Web3. Another interesting perspective, I don't know if that applies to everybody here. I mean, I've invested in 50 plus companies just in 2023, and the best performing investments have been one which have been around AI. Even though they may not have that much application of AI, even though they are just on the edge of using AI for their tools, and this is an investment summit, I think we really should touch on that, is their best performing investments this year have literally been around AI inside of the Web3 space also.
对，前面的嘉宾都介绍的非常好。
Well, that's all very well answered. So the consensus we reach here is that this will be a coexisting environment, interactive environment between AI and Web3. It's going to be a 1 + 1 is bigger than 2 situation. AI and Web3, all to be more specific, crypto. There are a lot of similarities between them. First, they are all silicon-based. AI is now called silicon-based life, and human is carbon-based life. And same with crypto versus the fiat currency or gold. It's fairly different. It's not man-made and it's not mined by human beings. It is based on a agreed algorithm, and it's generated by the computers. So the flow and the storage of it is all based on the internet. And that's one big reason that they will coexist. And secondly, they have both two pricing factors. The first one is based on the price of chips. We know that the machine for the training of LLM is now the pricing of the servers. And for crypto or Bitcoin, it's also determined by the price of the chip machine. And the other price factor is the price of energy, the price of electricity. So they have these in common. And that's the foundation of the production relationships going forward. And the interaction between the two will generate a lot of interesting applications. So the panelists have shared with us the relationship between the two with the concrete examples. But I will do it in a different perspective. If Web3 is a production relationship, then what is that? And be it assets or ownership, who owns them? And also the economical relationship for Web3, it plays a very important role, which is how you find money, people, resources in a more cost-efficient way. AI has been around for many years, and it's just recently the emergence of ChatGPT make AI more accessible to every individual. So people now have a tool of digitalization. It works the same way as a token. A lot of the things you don't need to learn, and you can just use the tools as a big help. With Web3, then the entire humankind can create and innovate at a much reduced cost because it's an open network and you can join the organizations and to create and innovate. And that's one thing that's important. And then is it the production relation changes then drives the productivity, or is it the other way around? On the surface of it, productivity improves, it changes the relations. However, and in each era, it's because of the change of the production relationship, and then you have a big uplift of the productivity. For example, from the feudal system to capital system, because of the relationship changes, then people are more motivated to work and produce. So in the digital era, every individual, if they can do wealth allocation and if they can get more resources, if you want to deliver that, you have to rely on digitalization. And it has to be controllable, ownable. And AI is a great tool for you to really create. And Web3 makes sure that you own what you create. So if Web3 continues to evolve, and then it will really help AI to empower every individual. Right now is these big companies, they own the large language models, which is the current reality now.
Some of the interesting AI-driven initiatives currently empowering Web3 that you're seeing, and what are the noteworthy direction for the development? I know everybody come from a different background, fields, and company, so I'd love to learn more about what you have seen and what's so interesting about it. Please.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll give some quick use cases. Obviously, if you're in the art space or the creative space, then obviously generating sort of assets is a big area, particularly in gaming, and not specifically Web3 gaming, but also traditional gaming. For instance, asset production in games is reduced by up to 80%. But it doesn't mean that the artists become irrelevant. What it does mean is that the artists actually start to become productive in a different way. So for instance, in the past, people would have to create mood boards, and it might take sometimes weeks to sort of create these mood boards, and AI will generate these mood boards for you quickly, right? At the end of the day, the output is still a human output, but they just use AI as these tools. It does mean, though, that the artist has to be more focused in being an artist as opposed to a producer, right? In the sense that traditionally, an artist was an artist, but also was creating the art itself. Whereas now, basically, the artist has to be much more creative in the thinking, in the storytelling, in the idea, to basically have the AI support in doing it. But what we also found is that it's helpful for a touch-up. So in other words, the art that they create isn't 100% ready on day one. It might be like 80 or 90% ready. That means that they still have to work sort of the last 10%. So there's value there. So for us, we just see this basically as a blossoming basically for sort of creative content. The other one, obviously, teams have mentioned it from a coding.
然后他们也可以帮助我们进行审计、来进行分析营销等等，所有的这些都可以得以加速发展，在 AI 的这些帮助之下，所以呢 ，AI 肯定是可以帮助我们提高生产力。我觉得对于我来说呢，我最感兴趣的呢，就是元宇宙如何能够进一步发展。因为我们呢，实际上看到这个虚拟现实已经发展了30周年的这个时间了，但是它实际上还没有起飞呢。所以大家说可能还没有准备好，硬件还不够。但是呢，我觉得还是要去看它这个内容这个有质量的内容真的是让人感兴趣去进一步使用的。另外，我现在感兴趣的就是这个 AI 在内容的生成方面，尤其是这种高质量的一些模式的产生还有这个环境还有角色的这些生成等等，还有就是跟虚拟环境的这种融合等等。那么你做成之后呢，人们就可能更愿意去使用你这个虚拟世界了。那现在虚拟世界里边都是空的。 那么如果真的是没有东西在那儿的话，人肯定不愿意去的。那如果你有很多的成千上万的一些虚拟的角色已经在那儿了你才能够慢慢的建立起来，你可以让真正的用家能够进来，然后呢，可以就是让这种正向循环能够得以形成。所以呢，我们今天呢，我们实际上有很多成千上万的一些开发商，可能有真的太多的开发商了。如果大家都可以把这种这个内容的这种做起来的话，然后能够创造这种内容，然后让用家更多来的话，那就是更好了。那我们呢，也是来去建立一个更容易的平台，来去创造这样的一个虚拟世界。你可以在任何的一些这个终端上，比如说手机或者是电脑上来去进行这种内容的创作。那你可以用 URL 就可以简单的做到，这就是我感到非常兴奋的地方。我觉得其实上刚刚你说到了 AR 和元宇宙了，还有就是这个艺术空间呢，这些，那我先不说。那么从技术层面我说一下。那么我是在2010年的时候已经开始了，我那时候用了6个月的时间就开发了我自己的一个 app。那现在用 AI 的话，AI 实际上它自己可以写软件，而且它已经非常的擅长了，可以那个时候的6个月可能只用6个小时，或者是甚至60分钟，你就可以把这个一个应用程式给它设计出来了，用 AI 做出来。所以这已经可以有一些可以看到，就是 AI 它的能力这个潜力是多大了。然后呢，你可以让很多的这个消费者来去买，然后呢，可以让大家看到 AI 的这个潜力。所以呢，你就是看到它的这个增长，每年是10%、20%、30%的速度在增长。我们看到有那么多的这个产品都已经被 AI 创造出来了，不仅仅是机器人了。而且它也已经被 AI 来去写，而且呢，你可以去用 AI 去做一些智能的一些合同的这个生成等等，而且 AI 可以告诉你合同哪里出错了。我觉得这是最大的可以来进行这个应用的地方一个场景，还有就是审计这一些软件也可以用到 AI。Maybe actually. You already pointed to a very large area that can be easily replaced by AI. That is the pan entertainment world. It covers a lot, including the metaverse and also the the whole chain game. That is, the whole chain of game production is moved on the blockchain. So the game that we used to play, its coding may be like millions. And some complicated games may require more codes. But for AI, actually, what's AI good at? It can generate a code rapidly, and we can use AI to generate zillions and billions of codes. So every players are very complicated or AI generated. Every NPC is faced with different audiences, different time, space, and they can adapt to different environment and different scenarios, and which is totally different from our past game experience. And actually, this is more fair because it's built upon the tokenized economical model and also can reach economic balance. So it can generate a new chapter that we never experienced before. And now AI has their own consciousness and their own sense, and maybe the games that we play in the future are generated and created by AI. So this is like the AI wisdom generated games that is for the use of a human. Yeah, okay, you mentioned a lot about the games. So in terms of time, there were some interesting points for AI and Web3, and talking about codes. The complexity of codes are not that high, and the diversity is also very low. and maybe millions and tens of millions of contracts, and 99% are having the swap or other similar functions. And for Web3, if you mention, if you say that we want to have more applications for Web3, they need to have a lot of differentiated scenarios. It is very easy to write a contract, but how to write a very secured contract and train AI to generate some new contract? I think we need to train them in terms of paradigms, and you need to build upon a very big data. And actually, the number of contracts are quite limited. So we spend a lot of time to think how can we use AI to generate more interesting contract paradigms. And another point is that our industry is very technological based, and actually general people cannot understand what is behind the data. They cannot analyze the data, for example, the security of the contracts and the relationships between different IPs. So in this industry, we can help the consumer side to rapidly recognize and identify the authenticity of the contract, and if there are any loopholes in the process. So that's where AI can help. This is another point. Thank you.
Question for Gavin and Livio. So, how can business and Web3 entrepreneurs harness AI and AIGC tech innovations for commercial opportunities? So, I'm seeing that like Gavin has mentioned, that from the academic standpoint, from the practical the execution levels, and as well as from the HashKey standpoint, how can entrepreneurs harness opportunities here? 所以在这个未来的 AI 还有 Web3的这个叙事当中，我们怎么样借助这个技术创新，然后又可以抓住商业化的这个变现的这个机遇？
It is a very pragmatical topic. So there's a very good technology need to be implemented and commercialized and generate values. That is the real value of the technology. So from this perspective, we should effectively make use of AI's value to the human society. For example, some entrepreneurs want to use AI to replace the labor-intensive business model. So, for example, delivery. Can AI become a delivery boy? No, because AI is mainly for the brain-intensive or the intelligence-intensive business. So, how to make a better use of it? We can see some example like a generation of the image and also the art creation, and even the NET teachers, native English teachers, to train the spoken English. So they have some paradigms already. So for those business industry, you need to hire millions of people, and the main cost is on human cost. But with AI, these labor costs can be greatly reduced after training of the big model. It can be even reduced to zero. I think this paradigm is the most suitable part for AI to be commercialized. Actually, for commercialization, obviously AI's value is quite obvious, but how can you make better use of such a business model? We can create some connector points. But for a community, how can you make it commercialized? Can you make it tokenized, or maybe with some campaign? They will have a Web3 low value association. Not long ago, they held several workshops on speaking out to the deductive parts of AI. So they say that there were so many companies that issued the bitcoins or cryptos under the flag of AI, but actually they did nothing. I think this is not a good thing to do. So how can we make a good use of AI? And in the meantime, we can also leverage on Web3. we need some basic business paradigm. How can you organize a group of people to use AI to generate a meaningful goal? That is the purpose of AI project. That is logic one. Second, if you want to make it tokenized, you need to rely on paradigm rather than just do it randomly. We have to realize the value gradually. That is what an enterprise should do. Either tokenize or commercialize AI. It needs some prudent thinking. Should not make the consumers think that AI is just a cheater in the Web3 age.
Based on what Gavin said here, I think a really good use of community and the group of people that could be used to train AI is because right now AI is dependent on the GPUs that we have and is dependent on the LLMs that are mostly owned by big tech companies. And I think a good use case here, I was just talking to somebody at the lunch also who's doing a GPU network, is basically a lot of the processing power right now goes wasted. It's held in power of in control of the community members and people like us that are not really using our full processing power. I think with Web3, you can tokenize this processing power and sell it back to the companies that are trying to build AI, sell it back to the individuals, the smaller companies trying to build AI and LLMs. I think that's going to be a really strong use case of using Web3 and tokenization in the AI space. It's actually training and making better AI, but not by the big tech companies who can finance this and spend billions of dollars, but rather the individuals who can sell their processing power, tokenize it, and then everybody else has the opportunity to access that. And I think that's also a lot more efficient use of our processing power that is not being touched upon right now.
Thank you. Does that anything to add?
I mean, I am actually quite in agreement with the gentleman at the end there in terms of really thinking about how to use this technology to create real value by solving real world problems. I think too many of the Web3 related projects in the last few years have been really about speculation and creating short-term wealth. So if we can start saying, what are the root value that can be created by applying this technology, and whether it's applied to the financial world or the physical world or a virtual world, there are definitely use cases and real world use cases in all of these. So if we focus on solving problems in those places, then there will be value created, and if there's value created, then it's sustainable, and it can be reverse some of the negative reputational issues that's happened the last few years. So
maybe I'll just add a thought on this one, which is because of what's happened generally with the growth of the internet, data has been abundant, value, sort of information is overflowing. The capacity for a human to know what is real or what isn't is diminishing, right, in the classic sense. That's also the reason why, when you think about what's happening in Web3, there is a lot of fraud that's happening. There's a lot of problems in the space. But part of the reason why that's a problem is because actually the pace of technology and the information is just way too abundant for any one person or even one organization to handle. So what's the mechanism in which you can create that kind of, let's call it defense? And actually AI is the answer to that, I think. Because in the future, we will have personalized AI agents anyway. But for instance, if I go and, let's say, do a swap on Uniswap, or if I end up doing something on chain, how do I actually know whether this is real or not? How do I know whether it's a scam or not? And in many ways in the past, we had physical constructs. We have, of course, you have to have regulation and so on. But the problem is that actually when anyone can just launch a smart contract, when anyone can just basically execute something on chain, how do I know if it's real or not? And that actually is a good use case for AI itself. AI, basically, your personal AI agent is actually able to keep up in the pace of whether there's fraud or not, because they can compete in the same computational speed as the other people, right? So one of the reasons why I think we have fraud is because you have on one hand sort of machine power and fake news and all that stuff, but then you have a human at the other side who doesn't have the ability to compete at the same speed. So now that AI is becoming essentially more amateurized, right, more accessible to everyone, the future will be such that we'll have these personalized AI agents. They will actually go out and represent our interests as well. They will become extensions in the same way that smartphones are extensions today of us. Essentially, the next extension of the smartphone is an AI agent And I don't think it's one agent. I think we'll have many, many agents that are basically going to be working for us. And, I mean, people joke, but it's true, right? So there's some companies, AI companies, that have very few staff because they basically have the ability to do AI work. In the same sense, when you think about decentralization as an individual, you may not have physical staff, but you will have maybe 100 AI agents working for you. In a certain way, that's already happening. When you're using Amazon, when you're using Facebook, when you're using these online products, you have these agents working for you already. They just don't work for you. They work for the platform. But basically, in a decentralized paradigm in Web3, these AI agents actually represent you and they will work for you. So that's kind of how this isn't going to happen next year, but it's a future that we see.
Yeah, totally agree. And then our next questions, while we are all trying to solve the real world problems, there's always regulation, right? So considering the evolving regulatory landscape, how should enterprise navigate AI and Web3 compliance? And what role should governments play? I like to ask these questions to Yat, to Alvin, to Evan, because I know that you come from, I know Animoca's portfolios everywhere around the world, at HTC as well, and as well Evan, right? Yeah, please.
So maybe, I mean, it's a big topic, but maybe I'll kick it off first by saying I think regulation is very, very important. I think recent cases, particularly in Hong Kong, have just illustrated the fact that regulation is actually not much more relevant because unfortunately, just as I illustrated earlier, the things that are happening, trust is something that people don't fully understand and comprehend. And so unregulated actually means people become sort of fearful, right? So how we get Web3 mass adoption actually comes from the fact that people feel it's safe. And so that means you should be operating with regulated platforms like HashKey, for instance, right? Instead of working with other companies that are not regulated, for instance, who you don't know what's happening. But how many sort of consumers actually know the difference, for instance? So it's not just a question of does the regulator do his job? They're doing their job. It's also how many people in the community, in the population, actually know the difference between regulated or not, because they may not understand it because there's a gap in sort of financial literacy and knowledge. And I think this is something that obviously over time will improve, but for the time being, we have this gap. I think the positive on regulation is not just a sense of security, but also it gives validation to the industry. If you're regulating something, that means it's serious, it's here to stay. But I think the counter is, of course, that you can over-regulate, right? And we've seen some other examples where it's not even regulation, it's more like sort of, basically sort of, hitting people over the head with a whack-a-mole, basically to sort of create a kind of sense of fear in the industry in sort of other parts of the world. And that actually becomes a negative, right? And you can see there's an outflow of talent and there's less capital and there's less investment, right? So the result obviously is you have to sort of strike a fine balance to allow basic innovation to flourish, which does require a little bit of disruption, right? You can't have real innovation without change and disruption. But at the same time, how do you keep it safe or keep it in a sandbox? And I'll close with this. Because Web3 has so many strong financial elements, it makes it much more trickier because of the fact that there's so much value involved because capital forms so quickly. Whereas I think something like AI, if it's AI that doesn't involve financial services, it's distinguishable. It's something that the damage isn't sort of as apparent. So I think anything that involves very strong financial elements, like trading and so on, I think do need the hand of the regulator.
Yeah, so I think regulation usually is to protect two different types of risks, right? One is the companies themselves that are in the industry abusing the power that they have. But the other one is also preventing bad actors from utilizing the technology that hurts the public. And unfortunately, I think right now, the regulatory bodies that are given the task of doing this probably aren't savvy enough in this area to provide proper regulation. I at least the speed and looking at some of the regulatory agency reviews that they have, it's pretty clear that their knowledge level is limited. So they really definitely need to spend more time talking to the industry, talking to experts in the space to gather. But there has been a number of regulations in the AI space that's been proposed. I think none of them, except for I think in China, has actually been enacted. So there's definitely things that I liked in what the Chinese AI regulation is proposing in terms of protecting the people, in terms of provenance of data, in terms of the transparency of AI generated content versus not, and so forth. So I think that there's a lot of value there, as well as a lot of the regulatory things they've done in the crypto space to limit abuse from some of the people who are issuing the coins and so forth. But the harder part is probably what to do with the bad actors. And I spent a number of years in the cybersecurity space, and I know how hard it is. And I know what Yad was talking about, using AI to protect against other AI. That there's a big issue there is that the bad actors usually have a lot more horsepower in terms of what they're doing, a lot more brain power in terms of trying to find the holes than the average person. Who has much more limited experience. This is why so many of the spams or the scams that are out there are successful, and so many of the ransomware are successful because it only takes one weak point in the whole company or in a person's one click to make yourself vulnerable. Whereas the attacker knows all of those flaws, and most consumers don't protect themselves, don't update their protection in time, even when those flaws are visible. So it's an uphill battle actually for the average consumer. Even if they had an AI bot, they probably won't update the signatures of the attacks in time.
But I think maybe if I can just sort of counter that a little bit in terms of, I agree that not all consumers are obviously able to protect themselves, but I think the vast majority of consumers are much better protected today than they were in the early days of the internet. If you remember sort of the Nigerian email scams and all that kind of stuff that took place in the early days, because the internet was actually open and you couldn't stop someone with SMTP. You can't block someone. So then you had anti-spam filters, and then you had antivirus, and then all these, and actually, even though clearly what the other side was doing was illegal, it spawned industries, large companies that provided valuable services to consumer that, effectively protected 99% of the world, right? It's true that there's people who maybe were sloppy or didn't pay attention, and maybe they had trouble, but the vast majority got protected. So I do think there's a commercial aspect around this, and I think of this as, when I talk about the AI agents, I think a similar thing will happen, whether it's in a decentralized fashion where people will build these AI agents and they'll update them, and there won't be just one, there might be tens or hundreds or thousands of them who create more security to counter the other guys that are out there, for instance, especially as sort of compute power basically becomes more and more abundant over time, which is effectively how antivirus works, right? Because your home PC now has the ability to actually do the stuff that maybe your computer, your Apple couldn't do before, right?
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. The trend is definitely in the positive side, but there's going to be a lot of pain in between. I mean, particularly now with AI, is not just digital. They can actually mimic your voice or your audio, and then make a virtual call using a regular phone system to get you to authorize something. And AI or antivirus systems won't help you against those kind of issues. So until we start figuring out how this multimodal attacks are going to happen and how to solve that, there needs to be time for both the AI industry as well as the cybersecurity industry to adapt to the new attacks that will be coming online.
That's why you need blockchain-based digital IDs.
I've been a rebel most of my life. So, I mean, as a builder, I think we can't really wait around for the policymakers to educate themselves to bring in the right legislation. But my advice to most companies and builders in the space will be as transparent as you can be. Right? The whole ethos of Web3 is built on transparency. So be as transparent and as ethical as you can be from your point. And then my advice to the legislators would be, you got to educate yourself quicker, because unless you have a hardware component to your company, most software companies can be incorporated and operate out of a whole different jurisdiction. And what that leads to that certain jurisdiction that loses that talent is that you have a brain drain. I was born in India, but I hold a St. Kitts passport, and my company is out of St. Kitts, and I've never been there in my life, right? So, I mean, we have these opportunities now where access to information is free. And the smartest people in the world who work in the AI and blockchain, they're going to go where they're treated best. So I think our legislators and the regulators really need to take a stronger step, and they need to educate themselves, and they need to come up with regulation fast. We definitely need the regulation to safeguard the community, and we definitely needed to protect the masses. But from a point of perspective of a builder, I think nobody's going to wait around. They're going to keep building, and they're going to keep growing. And the governments which support them and which give them, and now the onus is on the government, not on actually the builders. The governments which provide the support and treat them the best will gain the most out of this.
Thank you. Thank you. And I actually have close questions for all the panelists here. So what strategy would you recommend Web3 entrepreneurs to adopt to harness the potential of AI? I know we talked a lot about this kind of in the past, 30 minutes, but can you kind of summarize it? What would you give the advices to the entrepreneurs down here, and how can they capture the opportunity? What kind of strategy they should adopt?
I like to say the best way to predict the future is to go build it, right? So I would say get involved, read up some more, try to implement AI in best way you can. I think a lot of people actually have not even tried ChatGPT to say. I think when you try it, it opens your eyes, and that's a very basic application. It opens your eyes to what's possible and the potential that AI brings. So I think I would recommend people spend some more time, instead of going watching a movie 3 hours this weekend, spend 3 hours learning about AI and reading and trying different tools that AI has to offer, and you will soon realize that you may not have the job that you have in the future. So I think the first key thing is just spending some more time and using different tools and opening yourself up to the potential that AI really brings. Yeah, the best way to build the future, predict the future, is to go build it.
And
so in terms of where things are going next few years, I think we're going to see a very dramatic acceleration of how technology is going to affect and disrupt all industries and all aspects of our lives. So we really need to prepare as a society in terms of how to deal with a world where 30, 40, or 50% of people are going to become unemployed. And the application of AI into particularly the white collar world will be dramatically faster than every other prior industrial revolution that we've seen, in terms of, it used to be decades, and we're going to see that kind of transition happen within years. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity created in terms of creating new things for these unemployed people to do, new ways to re-educate, reskill them. So in terms of entrepreneurs, there is going to be huge opportunities. Whenever there's disruption in the industry, there's going to be opportunities created. So think about what jobs are going to be disrupted, what new needs are going to be created, and how you can apply technology and maybe even non-technology models to solve some of these people's problems, because there's going to be a very large population of people that will need to be supported and helped.
I think to me the question isn't really about AI, although it's related. AI to me represents a tool for productivity, something that can make things more powerful. I view it very similar to the introduction of the computer 40 years ago in terms of how it enhanced productivity. Yes, it changed the job market, but ultimately what the computer did, it made whatever you're trying to build, whether it's a startup, whether it's a job, whether it's an activity, whether it's a study, faster, better, more efficient. And that's basically, I think, what AI ultimately does. The tools and the paradigm may be different, but the outcome is the same, which is better, faster, more productivity, more speed, and so on. So if you're an entrepreneur, to your question, if you're an entrepreneur and you build with a strong purpose and vision, you have a mission that you want to achieve, then you use AI as a tool. You may not know, that tool may not exist to the other, to Evan's point. It's like, maybe you just build it, right? On the other hand, because you obsess about it, you find a tool that will help you with this as a result, because you're so driven in whatever it is you're trying to solve. So I think it's really about the problems you're solving, and AI will be there for you as long as you really care about what you want to solve.
So identify the questions. Right.
Okay. 我觉得这个首先每
Well, I think actually every individual in the future can not avoid using AI as a tool, especially for entrepreneurs and the startups or as a service industry, which will create a certain service to its customers. If you are an AI based entrepreneur, then you may have a more serious question to face because AI is very money consuming. The OpenAI without the input of the data from Microsoft and with billions of dollars as the financial support, it cannot develop to what it is now. So there is also various segmented industry in AI. So for every one of them, they need big data input and the investment in its human capital. For example, the engineers. So you have to calculate the budget and have to know where your money can generate from and how long it can last. And then you have to train your big model and then to provide it to the high to mid-end consumers, and then you have to estimate the timing. Maybe 99% of entrepreneurs will withdraw from the stage within 1 year. If you want to become the 1% survivors, you have to resolve all these issues. This is a very tough question to be solved. Okay, I will talk about a Web3 direction. I think of before the next round of a bull market comes. Actually, it may not come. There must be some new paradigm. It may have a better paradigm about organization, about the closed loop, and only with the better paradigms we can generate more valuable applications. And for some maybe more complicated scenarios and some protocols based on these scenarios, then there may be some new AI tools, and there will be more organizations to create the new scenarios. So I would suggest the entrepreneurs or organizations to first use the AI tool as much as possible because it will really help you to reduce the cost. And then another point is how can you organize more people to use the Web3 to do something concrete and practical? Maybe it will generate some unexpected returns or results. Thank you.
Applause to our panelists today. And thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for our moderator and also our guests. Thank you so much. And please be seated. Thank you.